Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about how vocabulary helps students to make meaning of the text that they're reading. First of all, it's important to realize that there are three different tiers when we think about vocabulary knowledge. Often, the oral language that we use is based on tier one words. These are basic vocabulary words that we use with our friends, we use at home with our families. These are spoken in everyday language. Examples of these words might be look, order, and old. Generally, we don't need to be taught these words, we just learn them through oral language development. Words that we do need to be taught that are high utility words that frequently appear in text, particularly in the text of upper elementary school students, like the fourth graders who we're working with, are tier two words. These are known as academic vocabulary. So you can see a word like examine is just a synonym for a word like old. Similarly, sequence is just a more sophisticated, nuanced word for order. And ancient also means old. So these are synonyms for those tier one words that we already know the meaning of. Therefore, when teaching tier two words, it's important to share the background knowledge, what a student might already know. And last are our tier three words. These are words that we might not understand the concept behind, and these often have to be explicitly taught. They're essential for understanding the content area. So these are three different types of rocks. When thinking about vocabulary, we first are going to think about breadth. How many words do I know? Now, a word like said, which is a tier one word, has many different synonyms. So these synonyms can be tier two, more nuanced, sophisticated words like explain, exclaimed, which is, I'm saying it very loudly, drawled, groused, rasped, cooed, and quipped. These are all different ways to say said. We also have a depth of knowledge when we think about vocabulary. How well do we know words? So we could have no knowledge at all, a general sense. I've heard that word, it's kind of familiar, or a context bound. Like I understand when someone uses the word in context, but otherwise I really wouldn't know what that word means. And then a rich decontextualized knowledge. So that means I can hear that word out of context and I know exactly what that means. Similarly, reading and writing go hand in hand. So, can I use that word in context? Can I add that word to my writing and add it appropriately and accurately? So, when we think of words, it's important to use Graves' four-part vocabulary instruction framework. So, these are the four different ways we can support word learning in the classroom: developing that word consciousness, teaching individual words, teaching word learning strategies to apply to lots of different words, and then again, providing a rich and varied language experience. Developing word consciousness is about playing with language, getting students excited to use new words. So that means in our readers' theater plays or in just our conversations with the students we're working with, we're going to use a bunch of tier two words. We might use a word like procrastinate and then give them the definition, don't waste time. So I think in class the other day, I used the word feedback, and one of the students asked, what does that mean? And then we had a conversation about what that word means. Often kids are more interested in learning the definition of a word when you're having a conversation with them than if they are reading it. Next, you want to incorporate these words into your daily structure. You want to use them with the students, play with them. You could have a word scavenger hunt, or even during transitions, you could play games where they have to think of as many synonyms as possible. We can also teach individual words just by adding these words into our readers' theater play. That's one way of teaching them, by giving students words to use in their informational text that they're writing about the global warming issue. That's another way we can explicitly expose students to words. They can see them in the reading text while they're doing research, and then we can encourage them to use those words in their green screen play. One way that we can teach words is using the Possum Graphic Organizer. This is a way to really analyze words so that we increase the depth of understanding as well as the breadth. So with Possum, we would share a word with a student, like inaudible, and then teach the phonology of that word. So how do we break it up? What does it sound like? The orthography, where are the syllables? Inaudible. And then the syntax, ask them what part of speech is it. Semantics, What does it mean? Understanding when have I heard this word, and then finally morphology, teaching them all the different word parts. So this possum graphic organizer is just one way for students to really analyze a word from many different dimensions. Another way that we can teach students understand what a word might mean is by teaching them the IDEAS acronym. The IDEAS acronym allows students, when they see a word in context in a book, instead of just skipping over that word, which many students do, 9 out of 10 students in fourth grade do not take the time to apply a strategy and figure out what the word means. Instead, they just skip over it because it intimidates them or scares them. So we want to teach students to be brave with new words they encounter, and these are some strategies they can use. They can infer by making a logical guess. What do I think this word means? So with this purple word here, predators, they could read the full sentence here and realize that there are some clues that let us know that predators are those that harm others, because the word harm is right here. Sometimes the definition is right there in the sentence. So with this word highlighted in red, frigorious, we might have students realize the definition is that a frigorious bird is one that mainly eats fruit. So that is a way that they can find the definition is right there in the context. Other times the example might be there in the sentence. So in the example of this blue term, inconspicuous, you can see that the example right after inconspicuous spots, it says high up in the trees as well as hidden by leaves. So that's an example of inconspicuous in context. Other times we might have students look for signal words such as unlike, and they can see that this green word that they might not know, incubate, can be defined using that signal word unlike. So birds incubate their eggs, unlike butterflies who lay eggs and fly away. So they might realize from context that a bird that incubates its eggs is going to take care of it, unlike the butterflies that just fly away and let it be hatched on its own. And finally, syntax, just thinking about grammar. This word that I don't know in yellow, is it a verb? Is it a noun? Is it a person's name? Asking them to think about that and then consider, oh, okay, it's something a bird does twice a year, moving north to south. I think it means movement. So that's a way using ideas. These are different strategies students can use to understand what words mean in context. Lastly, we can provide language experiences for students, field trips, having special guests, watching videos. These are all different ways that we can expose them and help them build knowledge of new words. Now, what I'd like you to do is consider how you are using some of these strategies in your teaching at School 12 and whether you can begin using them in Reader's Theater and also in the preparation of making the green screen video.